And I had a letter from some business people down in the downtown area complaining about homeless people in front of their stores and harassing their customers. Are we doing anything with that?
It's unfortunate Mr. Spencer's not here. Again, the city ordinances as they stand right now there's not a lot we can do as far as a passive panhandler, somebody sitting along Palafox Street passively panhandling. There's not a city ordinance that supports us asking them to move along unless the business has the right-of-way use. If they have the tables out there, it's a restaurant, that kind of stuff. But say if it's after hours and it's a retail store, there's not a lot in the city ordinance that would allow us to ask them to move on. And I can tell you we've had conversations with Councilman Spencer about that issue. Of course, it's his district, so we receive quite a few complaints. I live down there. My wife and I walk Palafox probably 4 or 5 times a week. We're down there, and I see the same thing that most people do. It is an issue. It's just unfortunate at this point. There's not a lot that we can do as a police department to ask them to move on.
Councilwoman Myers.
Even though there may not be city ordinances, aren't there state laws like loitering and things like that?
The opinion of our legal counsel is they do not meet that, because it would be everybody. Mm-hmm. If it's targeting just the panhandlers, there's not an ordinance. If it's a loitering, again, this is Palafox Street, so you don't necessarily, you want people downtown. And
well, the person who wrote the letter wasn't complaining about the fact that there are people there. He was complaining about conduct. That's an entirely different thing. So, I just wondered if there were any state laws that address the conduct that
there are, and we've used them depending. We've had them. I've got photographs of them actually passed out on Palafox Street. Make contact with them. That's something that we can do. The aggressive panhandling, we can address aggressive panhandling. But what we're seeing, the issues that we're seeing, probably 2 or 3 people, almost every block now downtown, are the passive panhandlers sitting against the wall with their sign, you name it, the hat or whatever it is, collecting donations. And there are people that are giving to them. They were asking the complaints about the panhandlers downtown on Palafox Street.
Yeah, and I mean, I received a letter directed to me. I don't know if other.
We all got it.
Okay, so everyone received a copy, and it's not a report that shows up on the 9. By the way, District 7 one with 10 different criminal activity types. District 6 had 9, but that doesn't show up as a statistic, but it's certainly, I think as this letter attests, it's the frequency is just increasing, and it's tremendous.
Councilwoman Myers.
If a person is passed out drunk, I mean, wouldn't that be, isn't there a law against that public?
We can address that. That's what I mentioned. There are some behaviors out there that we can address as a law enforcement agency. That is one of them that we would address.
So the person who wrote the letter also didn't just complain about the homeless. He also complained about city council members. He didn't.
I thought he was benign.
Oh, I didn't. I know who he was talking about.
Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you, Chief Lyter.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll move into City Attorney communication. Do you have any communication for us, Madam Attorney?
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to make Council aware that I was tasked to look at a homeless ordinance and an ordinance that might solve some of the issues, but however they change as the homeless population changes in various areas. I'm aware that, I'm not sure if Council was aware that the mayor and the police chiefs the city administrator, and I believe Council Member Spencer, were meeting on the issue, and I brought forward some ordinances and some solutions that were that I had firsthand knowledge of the development of those solutions when I was with the city attorney's office, and prior to that with the state attorney's office as an assistant state attorney. The homeless population was quite a concern in terms of the jails becoming mental health facilities, and so I'm very keenly aware of these issues. Of course, the conditions there, they are parallel to some of the conditions that we see, and there was an endeavor with a homeless trust, which is ongoing, making sure that the resources, police and hospitals were assisted by other types of organizations that could help in outreaching the individuals that were homeless. As well, there was quite a bit of litigation during the time I was there, recommending to the police department how to comply with some of the court orders not to seize, because it was found to be unconstitutional, particularly in the aftermath of the Pottinger case, for the items that the homeless had with them. It was a violation of their rights to seize their items. But so there are successful ordinances, and we have some of them: the anti-panhandling, the aggressive in certain districts, and the aggressive panhandling. But as far as just existing in the public space, where state law loitering penal statutes don't apply and state law trespass statutes cannot be utilized by the owners of the property in the right-of-way, you just have individuals that are in a space, and the issue is how to appropriately regulate their existence that doesn't offend other laws. And one of the solutions that the City of Miami, and I just wanted to also tell you, as recently as last year, the City of Miami City Commission was still struggling with the creating an ordinance for homeless individuals not to camp, and aimed at the removal of the sleeping items on the sidewalk, which failed. And then they did end up, almost at the end of 2015, finally passing an interlocal with a homeless outreach trust to help, because it's a very difficult endeavor. But what I foresee, and what I will be working on, will be just looking at the Palafox Street District, if that's the first order of concern, and having something similar to the Miami Design District, where possible regulations that could involve panhandling that's not aggressive panhandling, but it's just eliminating. And I think the recitals in in the Miami Design District ordinance talked about it's just not beneficial to the economic growth and of the area. So I think that's sustainable legally, and I'm going to work with the mayor's office, and of course with you, City Council, as well, in developing something that will be legally sustainable and fair.
Councilman Myers.
Yeah, I feel like we're just going backwards. This doesn't have anything to do with you. You weren't here. I mean, we've had these discussions before with city attorneys. We paid $30,000, the city council did, to hire an expert, Mr. Marbut, to come in here and work with the homeless task force that we created, that met for about 6 months, that came up with solutions to the issue of homelessness, including the legal solution. Have you read the report?
I have not, and I will obtain it and read it. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I will tell you, that's where we don't need to go backwards. We have had all kinds of legal advice. We had Mr. Marbut here who talked about the Pottinger case. We're not in compliance with Pottinger. We haven't implemented the recommendations that Mr. Marbut and the task force submitted. What I would like to request is that our council executive get a copy of the report, the final report from the task force, to all of us, to you. I don't know if Mr. Olson was here at the time, acting as the city administrator, but I don't want to go backwards. We need to go forward. And I mean, there are problems not just on Palafox Street, but there are problems in other parts of the city too. But we're not going to solve these problems. I have a lot of homeless people in District 2. I believe there are homeless people living along Carpenter Creek, and that's probably what's generating some of the garbage and trash in Carpenter Creek. And that's on public property owned by the city, and some of it's on private property. But we know the problems exist, but why aren't we following the recommendations of our expert and our homeless task force?
Well, I will certainly look at those recommendations and talk to all the interested folks that are asking me to look into this, and I'm certain that based on my experience, I can move us forward in direction from
Well, I would
the
like
city.
to move forward on all
Yes.
fronts, not just the law enforcement part of it and mental health part of it, but housing. You know, it's got to be a
Correct.
holistic approach.
Correct, and that's what our outreach program does, look at training and housing and as well as mental health and drug treatment issues. But I will certainly delve into this, and I've had the benefit of being down there in the thick of things. So
I think we're doing a much better job with veterans. Evidently, not doing enough for the others.
Vice President Spencer?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know this was going to be a topic today, but I do want, I am seeking everyone's or my colleagues' understanding of the importance of this issue. I may be stating the obvious, and I do ditto Councilwoman Meyer's request and appeal to our city attorney to catch up with where we've been. And we do have to look at this holistically. And then individually, I want to address Councilmember Myers so she can understand what I am feeling or what I'm experiencing as a representative of a district that, unlike perhaps some of the population that is living in a more passive posture at Carpenter's Creek and some other areas in our city, we have it's not unique from the context of the country nor the world, but unique in that, unlike some of the transients and the homeless, and recall at a council meeting, I shared with you all, I had a discussion with a couple that rode their bike from the Carpenter's Creek area to Bayfront and Chase every morning because of the high visibility opportunity at that intersection. I interact with them, and in this particular instance, I'm hoping that we can address it holistically, review the deficits that our community has in terms of services, and at the same time understand that we are announcing, come to this historic city, make important investment decisions, and on the Palafox Quarter in particular, because I live there, there are some events and behavioral patterns by the same individuals that are in such a state of intoxication and I'll say there's other behavior because of the substance abuse and addiction. They don't recognize me within a 4-hour period after I've had a conversation with them. I'm a 59-year-old male that's not as intimidated because I live down in the district. I see these people, but they do approach me, and I've had offensive things said to me, even though they've talked to me 4 hours prior to that. What I'm sharing with all of you is I do think we've got to find a balance while we find solutions too that ensures that the mother of the children, the grandparents, the visitor that has said, I'm coming to Pensacola now that I've discovered Charleston, I want to consider moving here. We've got to certainly address some of those issues, and balance is the word, equity is, and I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, I'll make mine very brief. I know the hour is getting late. Thank you, Mr. President. But I do support you, Ms. Bowling, to try to look at other ways to manage some of these issues we have. I encourage you. I supported Dr. Malbach coming to our community and supported that and still do. But I think we've got to enlarge, the conversation. We've got to look at what's working in other cities continually. This is we're never going to solve the homeless issue, but we're going to maybe be able to better manage the homeless issue, because I'm hearing from a lot of people about some situations we've got in our community, not just on Palafox, but other places. And these are tax-paying business owners that have rights also. And I'm not trying to take away anything from the homeless and not have sympathy and being sensitive to that. But I think there's some things going on that really aren't just the homeless. I think there's some other panhandling and stuff going on that we need to address. And I encourage Ms. Bowlings to look at ways that we can better manage the situation. I do support that, and I do also appreciate Dr. Malbach and all his findings and all. But if we can enlarge that and continue looking at ways to better manage, I do support that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for the city attorney? Okay.